In this video, I show you a Kickstarter preview for the game Cosmic Conquest that's going to come out on Kickstarter. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of August of 2024, we have 2 pledges for the Lava Burst Kickstarter. We have 1 pledge for the Flatline City Wave 3 Kickstarter. We have this Funkercall UV Light Curing Putty, this large silver dragon miniature from Tarnaris Adventures, and $100 going towards this Rapid Dice Box container that my Patreon supporters voted upon. Go ahead and use the link below to go to my Patreon page to find out how you can get in on Bob's Picks that is going to be happening this coming Sunday. So again, I apologize, I'm still sick with this cold, and so my voice is a little bit more nasally than normal. So Ridge from Rising Empire Studios did send me this prototype copy, review copy, for their upcoming Kickstarter that's going to be happening pretty soon in September. But I haven't been paid for my reviews, just like I never receive payment for any of my reviews, so that I can be honest with my thoughts about this game. But I do have to remark that this isn't going to be the final copy, as they will be tweaking some things and even some of the rules. I will be giving you a very quick rules overview so that you get to know how this game plays. But I will say right off the bat, this is not the type of typical game that I review on my channel. I'm mostly invested in games that have tons of miniatures and dungeon crawlers or tabletop wargaming. And honestly, I've never really gotten into, nor have I liked, any card-based games, or especially TCGs like Pokemon or Magic the Gathering or any of those kinds of games. I honestly want to have miniatures and have some kind of tactical nature to all of my games, so I've generally avoided playing anything that is sort of card-based. I have dabbled into some tactical role-playing games or tabletop wargaming that does utilize cards that enable me to make certain attacks or things like that. But a game system that is solely based on cards is not up my alley, because I'm honestly not that strategic and I don't know like which combos make for the most efficient attacks or defenses. I'm not a min-maxer, and so that doesn't really lend towards being able to build a deck, a custom deck, that maximizes or utilizes all of the strengths in the macro gameplay. But I do have to say that this game is pretty intriguing, because it does scratch the itch of being a little bit tactical on a board and having miniatures, although in this case, these are acrylic standees. Now, you know, if you have been a part of my channel at all, that I am totally into miniatures. I love painting miniatures, all that kind of stuff. But I do have to say, after seeing these acrylic standees for the first time, I think they look pretty awesome. I might actually be convinced in having 2D standees if they are these acrylic types that are super colorful like these ones here. Now, when I first received these, all the stands had this clear plastic protective sticker on only the stands, and I used my knife to peel them up. At first I thought they were just white like that, so just note, if you do receive the acrylic standee version, you might have to peel that sticker off. But there is something about not having to paint almost 20 miniatures and being able to dive right in. And again, I'm just really impressed with the quality of these acrylic standees. And also overall, the quality of the components is pretty high. I mean, these boards are super thick, and I just love the fact that all of them have these counters across the top and the bottom. I do have one note of criticism with the health tracker across the top that I'll mention a little bit later, but overall, I do think that this is high quality components. Even as a prototype version, if they stick with this level of quality, I think you're going to be relatively happy. And for being a company that has a whole TCG version of it, which is called Alpha Clash. I don't know really anything about Alpha Clash, but there is really relatively low number of cards. In fact, the only cards that you're going to have is the Armory, which is item upgrades that you can purchase here, as well as the Planet cards, which are just reference cards here. The thing that they do really, really well is the player aid is incredible. It has all of the rules. It's super handy for each player to have one of these. And then the Gambit Points, these are basically your victory point tracker. And I love that, again, there's a wheel that keeps track of how many Gambit Points that you have. And then a reference of how you gain Gambit Points, which I absolutely appreciate them as gameplay rules resources. Once I read through the rulebook, which is relatively short and quick, all of the rules that I needed are on these reference cards, so I didn't need to refer back to the rulebook at all. How does the game play and what do I think about it? Let's go ahead and go into the rules very quickly and I'll come back and tell you my thoughts. This is how you set up the game. First, go ahead and put out all of the planet tiles in a 3x3 like this. And then each side is going to draft their 3 players or 3 contenders on each side. But you have to have 1 sentinel, 1 savior, and then 1 destroyer. So you're picking from 3 different types. And there's various ways that you can do this, either random distribution or you can have people drafting which heroes that they want. And then here on the health counter, just turn everyone's health counter. You start off with 20. And make sure you start off with everyone on the unrivaled side. There is a awaken side, but you have to use XP in order to awaken it. Grab the either standees or miniatures for your team, put it on this holder and stick it on any starting planet that you want. And then draw 5 cards from the Armory deck. This is what you start off with that you can purchase. So let's go ahead and take a look at this really handy turn order card. So the first step is the recovery phase, where you can reduce your cooldowns, but since this is the first phase, what we do is we gain 2 XP. We do start off each game with 10 XP to each side. So when you start your turn, you will gain 2 more XP. I'm not 100% sure if at the very first turn, if you do gain that 2 XP or if you start off with 10, but we'll go ahead and grab the 2 XP. And then we can resolve any effects, but again, first turn. And then, optional, I can awaken any number of my unrivaled contenders. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I am going to spend 5 XP in order to flip over my Harmony Sworn. I'm not sure how to say that. But I'm going to flip it over to my awakened side. One thing I wish was when you flip it over, you have to redo the health stat. I wish it was mirrored, so that I wouldn't have to turn these anymore. Your cooldowns, set them at 0. But now I have access to these abilities, which I don't have here on the unrivaled side. Now I go into the Armory phase where I can purchase any number of cards. I have 12 XP, so I'm going to go ahead and spend 1 XP in order to purchase this card here, Veiled Strike. And it will give me this ability during combat. I am going to attach it to Harmony Sworn, and then you immediately flip over another Armory card, which is available for purchase. Or I can spend 2 XP and totally clear out and redraw 5 more cards if I'm not happy with any of those. Now I move into the action phase, and I can perform any of these actions in any order or any multiple, so I can move my contenders 2 spaces, and in movement here it is all orthogonal, no diagonal movement, so this would cost me my 2 activations and then I would be done because I don't have any more activations. An alternative is I can spend 2 XP in order to move to any location on the map. Actually, this is my character. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and move from Evelyn over to Earth as 1 activation. And then for my second action, I am going to engage in combat. So the interesting thing about this game is your whole team isn't engaging in combat. You pick one of your contenders to attack any one of your opponent's contenders. So it's 1v1 even though you're traveling as a group. So since I went ahead and awakened Harmony Sworn, I'm going to go ahead and attack with him because I want access to this ability. And let's go ahead and attack their Alpha Aster, who again starts at 20 points of health. And because Alpha Aster is not in their awakened state, they don't have access to any of this stuff. Although they still have access to this ability down here. So every attack starts off with 6 red dice, And then if you have any abilities that add red dice, you go ahead and do that, but I don't, so I'm going to start off with 6. And then the defender has 5 defense dice. So we're going to go ahead and roll these simultaneously. And then starting with the attacker, I can choose to re-roll any number of dice. So I'm going to go ahead and re-roll these dice. So this is pretty good. Now I do have an ability here, I would have to stop here, but I can re-roll my combat dice 1 additional time if I want to trigger this ability. But once you use it, it does have a 3-turn cooldown, so you can't just use it every single turn, so you have to be selective. But because I'm pretty happy with this roll, I'm going to keep that. And then the defender here can choose to re-roll their dice, which he will go ahead and re-roll the miss, and these as well, hoping for more blocks. Even though he's going to do damage with these, because right now Harmony Sworn only has 1 defense. So even if you lose a die roll like this situation, you can still do damage to the other player. So let's go ahead and re-roll these. And unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately, I got more swords rather than more shields. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. So the 2 shields will negate 2 swords, and then we have 4 swords here. One of those swords is negated with this shield. So what's left over is 3 swords, and then over here is 4 swords. So that's how much damage that they're doing to each other. But this is where it isn't just straight rolls, because you look at some of the abilities. Here this isn't in play because there's no miss. I re-rolled the miss anyway. And then the attacker can now use any of their abilities, which I will use the Hive Mind ability. I can add 1 double sword to my final combat value for each unrivaled contender I control. My 2 remaining contenders are on their unrivaled side, so I'm going to add 4 more swords to this roll. But this does trigger my cooldown. So each turn I have to wait 3 turns before I can use this again. Also, this card is going to go into play, and this is a combat card noted by the symbol up here. It says if your final combat value has 3 or more matching symbols, the defending contender loses 3 more health after combat damage is resolved. So because I had 4 of the same matching symbols, it is going to trigger this ability. So he's going to take 3 more on top of the now 8 damage that he's going to take because of this ability that triggered here. So in total, he's going to take 11 points of damage, which brings him down to 9. And then Harmony Sworn is going to take the 3 damage that went through over here. So he's down to 17. This card is discarded, it's one-time use. Alright, so that was the combat phase. I'm done with the actions. And then now we check the Conquest phase. So let's go ahead and take a look at Earth's Conquer conditions. It says final combat value had 4 or more matching symbols during a combat phase this turn, which was true because again I had 4 of these sword symbols that are matching, so I actually conquered Earth. So these are the Conquer cards. So now that I will grab the Earth Conquered card, it gives me this ability. If your final combat value contains 4 more matching symbols, move to a planet of your choice after your combat phase. So basically I get to move to anywhere of the tiles for free after my combat is done. So this stays with me unless my opposing player can overthrow. So basically meet these conditions where on Earth there's a combat and the combat value had 5 or more matching symbols, and then they will be able to take this card away from me by overthrowing. And then this passive just describes what is already on this card. So that's pretty much it in terms of gameplay. Relatively simple and pretty quick to play, and you can get some pretty cool combos based off of the abilities of your characters. Obviously it is advantageous to flip these over. There are consequences for knocking things out. And then finally, you do get Gambit Points, which are sort of like victory points, so you're trying to get up to 20, and here is a list of ways that you can gain Gambit Points. In this circumstance with this battle, I do collect 1 for dealing 5 or more damage to an opposing contender. I did 11 points of damage. That doesn't multiply. You only receive that once. So I got 1 for that. And I did conquer a planet, which gave me 2 more. So at the end of that first round, I have 3 Gambit Points. Another way that the game ends isn't just the first person to get to 20, but also there's a timer so that after 10 turns, and this is what the 20-sided die is for. Not sure why it's not a 10-sided die, but maybe there's a game mode that does more than 10 rounds. But you just count it down each round after both players have gone. This slowly counts down, and after 10 turns, the game is over. And then whoever has the most Gambit point wins. So that's pretty much it. The rules are relatively simple, and the game plays very, very quickly. So I did get a chance to play this game at Gen Con with some of the Rising Empire Studios employees, and had a really fun time. Again, being able to chuck the dice, being able to adjust it based off of your abilities with your characters, as well as some of the Armory cards, really made it fun. And there was a lot of tactical decision making with all of the different planets that are on the board and what kind of passives that you can get if you are able to conquer them. And I didn't note that once your character does go down to 0, they do revive back, and they're just flipped over to their unrivaled side again and start all over again. So it isn't like you're completely destroyed and you can't play anymore. I also like the fact that you can have some awesome turns where you just rack up a bunch of Gambit points all at once because you saved up for a combo that utilizes a bunch of your abilities all at once, which is super, super satisfying. And this game can be a 4-player game. And typically that is going to be a 2v2. And when I was talking to the Rising Empire folks, they were saying that they are going to come out with different game modes where you actually move individual contenders rather than keeping them all together on one board. So I am super excited to see what they do with this game and this system. I think it is pretty cool. And I do know that there is very deep lore surrounding their card-based game, which is also involving sort of what's happening here. So if you are the kind of player that really gets into the story, gets into the characters' backgrounds, I know that they have a comic book, they have stories, all kinds of stuff that really does provide some deep lore to this universe, which is something that I really appreciate as well. So I think I am pleasantly surprised to find myself really liking this game. Again, it's very different, very unique from any other game that I have played. If you are a TCG player, maybe this will be more familiar to you. But for me, as a tabletop wargamer, as a person who only played a similar game like Underworlds, which this is very, very different from Underworlds. Underworlds is still a miniatures-based game using cards. But this just is really, really unique, really different. And because of the box being so small, I think for the most part, that's going to keep the price down. Not sure what the pricing is going to be on the Kickstarter page, but go ahead and use the link to go to sign up to be notified once the Kickstarter starts in September, and then you'll be able to see what the different pledge levels are. But I think this base box is going to be relatively affordable for you. And again, I absolutely don't mind these standees, these acrylic standees. So if you're not a painter, if you're not a miniatures aficionado, I think the standees are actually perfectly fine to go that route. So this game receives the Gaming Geek stamp of approval. I definitely think that you might enjoy this very unique game, and the fact that you can play with more than just 1v1 makes it additionally accessible too. So go ahead and use my links below if you are interested. Again, either being signed up to be notified once it launches, or after the campaign has started, go ahead and go over there and make your pledge. And hopefully one of the pledges will be next month, September's GGGGs. So use the link again to go to my Patreon page where you can sign up to potentially receive one of these gratitude gifts. Thanks so much for watching. Happy gaming. We'll see you next time.